Geeta ma'am today with us. She's the founder of Ethos, and she's the perfect example when I need to understand and learn architecture in the local context and in the Indian context. So let's not further wait and have her on board with us. It's going to be a very nice session. Stay tuned for all the details and all the knowledgeable facts and notes she tells us. Okay, so by the time she joins us, you can write it in the chat box. Did you find our Navratri Design Sangam useful? Was it interesting for you? And did you learn something out of it? And the last day of Navratri, how are you celebrating it? That's for sure a must question for all of you. Were these sessions useful for you?
I guess we'll just have her with us. Okay. Hi, ma'am. How are you?
Hi, Bhavna. I'm well. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for coming back after really long on our platform, and I'm very happy to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure to be with you again. It's been I think it was a year or so ago when we first had the live with you, and nice to be back.
Yes.
Hope you've been enjoying the pujas.
Yeah. So happy Navratri, and thank you for taking time out on these auspicious days for the platform. Also, I just want to know, how are you celebrating Navratri, and how Navratri is special for you? What do you do for Navratri?
So I think coming from Kolkata, you know how special Durga Puja is here. It's extremely vibrant, and the city is transformed into something you have to be here to experience. It's a huge art, extravaganza of sorts. It's extremely lovely, and some of the pandals that we've been seeing have really, exposed us to what is possible. And every year, I think it surpasses itself. There's something new that we see, and we keep thinking, "Oh, it can't get better," and it does. So I also had the real good fortune of having my entire team with me until yesterday. So the Ethos team met up. We are
very interesting.
we are a virtual office, as you can see, but we all got together, and we did a lot of things together. We celebrated a lot of things together. So it was really, really nice. Yeah.
That's nice. For me also, this time Navratri has been very special. I'm learning every day new topic. And then these days I'm studying more about Navratris and what each day depicts. So it has been an interesting journey for me as well this time. So I'm exact. So for you, I had in mind to discuss architecture, design, and art. So the fusion of all three together. So I wanted to understand what according to you, the fusion of all three, art, architecture, and design, is important when we, and come up to the education point of view.
I think what you asked me fits in very, very beautifully with our new initiative that we just launched called BODE, which is Building on Design Histories. It expands to Building on Design Histories. And this is something that came about after my first walk. It was important. We identified 6 areas, action areas, and one of them was traditional wisdom and how, local intelligence, native intelligence can actually come together in the process of us formal designers actually taking this forward. So whether it is the space of art, whether it's the space of craft, whether it's the space of design or architecture, how local intelligence can also go hand in hand. And recently, I think, I don't know if you saw our post, we recently concluded an Odisha walking studio. Since you speak of education, we actually did a walking studio where we walked from, I walked from Konark to Puri, Puri to Bhubaneswar. The others walked within respective settlements, whether it was a fisherman's settlement to understand architecture, whether it was a religious settlement to understand how religion and spirituality kind of come into our lives and dictate how we should design, or whether it was a village like Raghurajpur, which is a UN heritage site where the art form being the Patachitra paintings and the coconut shell work and things like that that they make actually rule and decide how the layout of their little village should be, where common workspaces should be, where their area where they sell stuff should be, and so on. So it was very interesting how we discovered as we walked. And I think that's going to be the crux of what I will be saying today, that you have to be out there to experience, to soak in, to understand what communities need, and then get back into deciding what you need to do as far as bringing art, architecture, and design together.
Yeah. And I've been recently seeing that you visit a lot of villages and you, talk about design there and we talk about architecture there. So I want to hear some of the very fine experiences that you were about to, or you actually felt when you went there, that how locals are interacting with design and architecture and what is their reaction and what is their learning towards it.
So when people in villages and the locals, as you call them, design with the traditional systems of building that they're familiar with and the traditional materials of building that they're familiar with, they are masters. And we have a lot to learn from them. But when they begin, and because we are using, we are moving ahead or backward, whichever way you want to, in cities, doing things differently. And they see that now with the world of information being so open and so much of travel between cities and towns happening, media being there and television being there and so on, they see what is there, and aspirational becomes what probably is in these cities because they think affluence is linked to the way we build. And when they start building in that way, I think they kind of lose their way sometimes, and that's where they probably need some guidance because they're trying to do what they're not even trying to do what they were used to. They're not even, it's not like carpentry in stone or something like that, but carpentry in concrete or anything like that. But they're trying to do something that's neither here nor there with materials that they're not familiar with. So that's something that we are also working on, where how we can make design accessible to people who need it most. As far as their homes, the way they were is concerned, they are absolute gems. And as far as architects, I mean, architecture and design they're familiar with because they're interacting with them every day. But as far as architects and designers go, we don't exist for them. We are irrelevant. They don't know of our existence. And I think that's something very crucial, that we need to be out there, to be seen, to be doing things for us to be relevant in these places. And about the ways of building as well, I think there's a lot that, this whole thing of permanent and impermanent structures is also something that we need to question. We call homes that have been built with mud and thatch and mud and tiles, or even sun-baked bricks, or whichever, local ways of construction, which have been in existence for over 100 years, we still call them kacha and impermanent. While something that's more recent, materials that are more recent, that haven't even lasted a century, they're calling them, pakka. So I think these are all things we need to question and understand for ourselves, and maybe look at ways in which we change these terminologies as well. And for people not to believe that prosperity or permanence comes with a certain kind of construction, because I've also seen how people link events in life, like if their daughter needs to get married or their son needs to get married, they say that people will look at their homes only if they are quote unquote pakka, and that's something that is again kind of a matter of concern, because that's again definitions that we as people give to these structures. Yeah.
Okay. And like you have been discovering a lot of maybe structures, the houses, or maybe the art pieces that are done by the villagers. So do you think that architecture, the spatial planning, and aesthetics, all three of them are going hand in hand with what they design or what they come up with, or they are compromising on one particular aspect?
No, I think many of their homes actually are built by themselves or by the community together. So when they come together and build, there definitely is all that you say, the coming together, because there are people who are building for you, who know a certain craft, and the art of building itself becomes an art there actually. So it's an art form of sorts, because they have certain features that become part of the way they build, the way the chaukat comes together, or the dahliz comes up, or the chabutras come up, or the way they decorate the like we call it the architrave, but the way they decorate the door frames or the window frames, and the windows themselves, how they get taken care of in very simple ways. They're not looking at its expression of what they are. It's as simple as that, and it's very beautifully done, and it comes together very well. I mean, we saw a lot of examples of it. But when they start becoming, they start using newer methods of construction, then those things get imitated in the newer methods, and kind of that local charm and that originality that is there kind of gets lost. So I think they're coming together, and I think if you look at newer, some very nice projects that have been done, say by, we were in Bhubaneswar also talking about the Krishi Bhavan by Lotus Design, or Tanuja has, Kanvinde Associates has done a project where art, craft and architecture have come together very, very beautifully. There is a small house called The Nest, I think, if I'm not wrong, by Pinkish Shah, SPNS in Mumbai, where it's actually their walk-in wardrobe, where they got a very famous artist, I mean a local artist, not a famous artist in that sense, but a local small village level artist to come and paint those four walls of that walk-in wardrobe, and that becomes the centerpiece of the house. And there have also been conversations where when you bring a painting and hang it on the wall, then it's like there for good. It's not dynamic, it doesn't change. But when you paint walls, you kind of tend to repaint them and bring in newer flavors, and over time it kind of gets changed. So there are people who do that as well. I'm talking about architects who are adopting some of those approaches, which I think we need a lot more of, so that you're nurturing some of these artists, local craftsmen and local crafts. We're also helping them evolve and blend their expertise into putting it to use in many, many places. And I think it's also giving them a new lease of life.
Yeah, and I think that these minor changes that they make in design or art, they're very emotionally attached, and there's a very big emotional purpose for doing it. So, from what I remember, just discovering a village in Rajasthan, and all these small houses had more finer details, intricate details, that as an architect I would embrace that. Okay, how beautifully they have done it, and we won't even think about very simple but very beautiful.
Right, yeah.
And they attach to it that okay, they have a story behind all the details.
Every element in their house has a story, and there were so many stories that one was kind of being exposed to when we were walking, and even nuggets of wisdom on why certain practices were followed. What were the local ways of treating, say, termites because they're doing mud homes, or how they, what kind of grass they got from forests for their charpoys. These are all things that we don't know enough about, and once we allow the reckless is a word I would use, reckless upgradation that's happening these days. And when I go back to the same places, even 3 months down the line, I see so much transformation already. While the house is gone, I think at least the knowledge needs to be preserved, and for which it's extremely important for all of us to come together to see how we can document and make these things open resource available to all, really.
And do you think how important it is for architecture students to understand and learn all these the traditional practices that have always been there?
I'm not sure. So, the way, in terms of making it financially viable, I'm not sure it's something that everybody needs to learn everything. They need to know that these exist, because it's impossible. There's so much happening. They need to know that they exist. They need to be mindful of it. They need to give it the respect that it deserves. They need to give it the dignity that it deserves. They need to use it as and when a project demands it. See how they can integrate it into their projects. But I think it's important for colleges to look at how they can learn their respective vernaculars. So if you are from a college in Punjab, understanding, and not just Punjab, say Chandigarh ke aspas, the villages that are there, how do they build and absorbing that? And you become the center for vernacular excellence for that region. And every college then has its own potential to become that center for that region. There is no competition also between each other then, because you are not looking at, competing with each other and saying, I'm becoming the know-all for all of India. You can only do that, and you equip your students to become sensitive to what is there. You document that and then make it available for everybody. And those are ways in which co-learning and growing can happen through sharing.
Yeah. I remember I have done my college from Chandigarh, and I had a case study to go around and study the village for 6 months. There were so minute details that we understood about construction, about the design techniques that they themselves are using. And somewhere I realized all the periphery of the village will always have all the modern houses, and you will not even understand the crux of their thought and design. But as we move forward, as we go inside, we really get to know the details that their vernacular architecture is talking about, and what is their philosophy doing their, what is their part in the designs and the houses that they build.
Yeah.
So, I mean, without the education, just by, helping each other and understanding the space and the usage, they design it so well. So that's really beautiful, I would say.
Right.
Okay. So my last question to you, I'm very curious about it. Whenever you're talking to the locals and you tell them about architecture, design, so is there a lot of influence of the modern architecture and the cities to them? And are they like, how much percentage of people are really trying to build something that has been built in the cities, or what they see on the internet, because these days internet is always accessible to
I would say almost all of them. I mean, 98% of them, unfortunately. When I sit and have this chat with them on the depth of their knowledge, their homes, and how they always say they love the space they are in. They believe in the kind of construction. But if they were to build a new home, it would be, they would move ahead and leave this behind. So it's quite heartbreaking when you listen to that. But then, in all fairness, we are not building in that, in that manner either. We are not advocating that our clients build in that manner. So maybe it's time to begin with some of those panchayat buildings, the government schools, etc., that become examples of how we can, show them that it's aspirational. These are also buildings that people would like to, the richer folk, as they see many of us, would like to live in, would like to use. Maybe that'll make them, the only place that I see people wanting to retain, while there's a lot of pride in their homes, is where there is, this, what's it called, homestays and those kind of tourism that's happening. because there are people who, so then they start realizing that rich people want to live in these places. So there is something in this that is beautiful that needs to be nurtured. One other thing that I'd like to talk about before we close, Bhavna, is we talk about conservation in a very, there was a recent campaign also, adopt a monument, and we're talking about the larger monuments. We're talking about UN heritage sites to various structures those that we call monuments. And monuments are largely associated with a certain scale, with a certain purpose. And people don't even, there are many people who don't even feel comfortable going into a monument. It's a bit like our current day malls. How many common people who walk on the road feel comfortable going into our malls? So the palaces and the forts and the larger structures that we call monuments, common people never felt comfortable going there, even in those days, leave alone today. So how do we, I mean, for me, those are, while they're important, they are not the ones that tell the story of the real people. They tell the story of a very small segment of people who use that space. And if we as architects want to understand what real design and architecture and ways of building were, I think it's important for us to look at the day-to-day homes that people lived in and are still living in, and learn from them, because that's what's going to really give us tips and insights into to enhance our way of building. Because we are looking at building, we are looking at building for common people. We are not looking at building for only a certain strata of people. And I think we need to learn from them.
Architecture, always looking up to the monuments or the big, huge buildings that are designed by architects or have some decent architecture details, but we're never going to small houses or the common places that we are actually now designing. So very, very well said. This is a very big learning that I would, tell others as well when we do our case study.
Yeah, please do spread the word on that.
Yeah, I hope that I'm able to spread the word, and because it's very disheartening to listen that people, there's a huge gap between the local designs, the vernacular architecture, and what we're doing today, especially when it comes to young architects. So yeah, I hope by the help of my platform and your platform, we're able to bridge that gap and help a young architect.
Thank you, Bhavna. It's been nice chatting.
Thank you so much.
Anything else that you want to talk on? Or you want to?
I'll just see if we have some questions from the audience we can take, and then I can end the chat. If you have any questions related to art, architecture, the local context of architecture, you can just write them in the chat box. So we had one question. I'll just search that. How is the Indian tradition related to vernacular architecture?
So vernacular architecture really is. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Vernacular architecture is when people build their own spaces, really. People design and build their own spaces. That's really the definition of vernacular architecture. So if Indians are building their own spaces, it's what they want, and that sets off a tradition. So I think they're extremely closely related, really. Defined traditions are very different from the actual practices. You might read something in books on what our tradition is and what our vernacular architecture was. But when you go out there and see why they're building because the way they live demands it. And the way they live is what is largely tradition. As you go along, it's going to become tradition if we don't do something about it soon. So that's how I see it. Yeah.
And last thing, I was recently talking about the vernacular buildings in a previous session, and we discussed that they never get old and they never get out of fashion. But we were talking about the big buildings and the monuments. So you have now experienced all the small buildings and all the small houses at the villages. So what was your experience as an architect? That do they get out of fashion, or do you think that these buildings are extinct or old and they need some renovations, or they're just not use of anything?
Again,
What was
I
your
think we
experience?
are looking at it from a slightly elitist perspective. We're sitting here, for us, they don't go out of fashion, but for them, they're going out of fashion, right? That's why they're craving for different stuff. They're craving for the newer, and you're not seeing them wanting their old homes. So unfortunately, I believe for them, they are going out of fashion. That's the reality of it, because it's, I think 60 to 70% of villages are already transformed in most places. They're being given loans to upgrade, and most of them are upgrading to modern dwellings and leaving what they have behind. So yes, I think while it's nice for us to say that they don't go out of fashion, sadly, I think for the people who are actually using them, they are going out of fashion. Yeah.
Fashion. Maybe because they're looking at the activities and the services that the modern houses are providing, the
I
comfort that the
think it's
modern
the
houses are
largest,
providing.
the biggest factor is the maintenance. And, because so that's a conversation. We recently had a debate in the village Madla in Madhya Pradesh in school. In the schools, students 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 class. And it was between Pakka and Kacha. While I didn't realize they were going to do it between Pakka and Kacha, I wanted between old and new. But they called the old Kacha and they called the new Pakka. And they were having that debate. And it was very interesting to see their points of view on why they're choosing Pakka over Kacha. And in some cases, there were people who were talking for the old. And, they were talking about how even spreading dung plaster on the floor and the walls, how it helps keep away diseases, and how anything that you use in terms of brick, etc., is energy intensive. So they were talking about a lot of those things at that level of being kids. But when they actually go down to building their own homes, I'm not sure how many of them. So these are measures we are trying to take through small projects to see how we can instill in them that pride and love for their way of building and say that it's superior. But it is never superior until we all start believing it is. We are okay with using some of that when we go on holidays, but not really for our own construction.
And I think we always cherish what we don't have, and we're looking for anything that is far away from our reach is something that we cherish. So we in cities are looking for the village houses, and villages are looking for us. It's something like that. Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am, for being a part. It was lovely talking to you. And I was very excited when I was seeing your stories that you're traveling to villages and making people understand it about design. And I always wanted to be a real part of it, but I was always a virtual part of it. I was always looking and following all of this. So now I'm here to understand your experiences. It felt really
Pleasure
great.
to be
Thank
with
you so
you.
much.
Happy Vijayadashmi. Happy Dasara. Happy Dasahara. Yeah. God bless.